It was Deborah, my wife of 40 years, said to me in 2010, and Dana Mecum, the collector car auctioneer, who I met at his first auction. They both said, you think maybe you're doing a little too much? And what are you talking about? At that time, I was involved with Iron Planet in creating a subsequent to fail Iron Planet Motors digital platform, a precursor to Bring a Trailer that obviously wasn't as good as what they did. I was consulting with Dana Mecum on his wooden boat division that we created.
Was Iron Planet a way to bonify the background of cars, not quite Carfax, or am I way off on the wrong track?
No, you're on the wrong side. That was a True Frame.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Iron Planet was oh gosh. So here we go. It's just like dominoes. So I had this auctioneer in my lane in Orlando that sold cars for me. He stood next to me and auctioned my cars in the closed private auction business. And he was offered the opportunity to be the first auctioneer to sell military Humvees to the public.
Okay.
I went to that auction because he invited me, and I thought they brought too much money, so I didn't buy a single one. And about a month and a half later, he says, hey, we didn't sell enough of those Humvees. I said, what do you mean you didn't sell enough? Well, the Marine Corps that owned them wanted to be able to create enough dollars in the sale of these Humvees to acquire more equipment. And so I said, okay. He said, bottom line is we need to sell 300 more Humvees, and I've been allowed to sell 100 at a time to 3 people. Do you want to buy 100 Humvees? I mean, my dad taught me, I will tell you the driving force of me playing with specialty stuff, offshore championship boats and cranes and bulldozers and buses and planes. He taught me a really simple process of valuing used assets, and you would be shocked how often it works. And it's this simple. So I won't take credit for this. This is for my dad.
Okay.
Anything that is like new and is serviceable is worth half of new to an end user.
Okay.
So what we would do, or I took that on the next step, and I said, okay, well, if a $100,000 brand new piece, according to his philosophy, is worth $50,000, as long as you can still buy parts and service it, and it looks like new, then I need to buy it for less than 50. So this to be safe, the more obscure and weird it is, I'll just do half of half. So if I was buying a $100,000 piece for 25 grand, it was like new and serviceable, I should be able to sell it for 50.
You'd think.
And it works. And so Deborah and I drove from Clinton, Iowa to this little ramshackle house overlooking a lake. And I'm not kidding you, Jeff. 20 or 30 of the coolest cars that you can imagine. Pontoon Fender Ferraris, Mira, Testarossa, just the creme de la creme, right? Like crazy cool cars.
Jeff Sterns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Sterns.
So, car dealer, truck driver, collector of every odd engine, boat, truck, this, that. Special relationship with Bring a Trailer. We'll have to talk about that. Involved it with Mecum. I was using the list before you bought the list, and you have the list.
Yeah.
You bought my Flathead car. Politician, banker, semi-pastor, or a real one. Maybe you just come across that way. Are you official?
Yeah. See how I'm looking at it. It's not because I'm reading something on my phone. It's like, yeah. So I was introduced once at a political function. Women's League had me come talk. And they went through this similar BS kind of list of my background. And I was like, God, I don't like this. I got to come up with something. And it hit me. So I went up there and I said, well, thanks for the introduction, but really no thanks. But let me just level the playing field. All that stuff that she just said and you just said, just never mind all that. I'm just like you. I'm a sinner. That's all you need to know about me.
But Scott Ailes, no matter who I talked to about Scott Ailes, I could never get anyone to say, look, I could get him to say, I wish he paid me more for this. Or he beat me out on buying that, or they can get mad about that. But I never heard an integrity or character problem ever. And I think I've known your name, God, I'm not sure, but at least 20 years, it might be 25.
Well, I can open up the treasure trove of mistakes and character flaws easily. How many stories do you want to hear? I mean, I got them, and I wouldn't trade them for any amount of money. I mean, they build who I want to be. I actually drug one up from 25 years ago just the other day, and I sort of taught a young guy a lesson, and it wasn't like I was, I'm going to show him. It was like, that meant so much to me when I screwed up. I know this is going to hurt when he goes through this process, but it's going to give him the opportunity to be a really, really great or better car guy. It made a difference in me. Basically, as a simple version is, if you are familiar with the wholesale auction business, you get those cars running across the block, and one day I had 25 cars. I had sold.
Do you mind, Scott? You said simplified version, but I don't know if our audience are car people.
Okay.
So do you mind when you say the wholesale car business? Do you mind breaking that down a little?
So let me keep this story simple. In the car business, we refer to getting sold out as I commit to buy a car from you, and you commit to sell it to me, and then some other schmuck comes along and offers you $100 more, and you sell it to him. You sold me out, and
because I committed to you. That's right.
Yeah. So you can only take so much of that, and you're like, hey, is this relationship really worth long-term value?
Right.
I sold a really amazing person out. I did over $1,000, like a guy that I did and still respect to the nines, Dale Harrison, RVM, Atlanta.
Okay.
And the second that I did it, I had remorse, and I called him instantly. And I didn't come up with some story about, making up why. I just said, hey, flat out, I don't know why I did it, but I did. And I'm telling you, I sold you out. And he goes, Scott, I can't do business with you again. And he did not ever. And that set the bar for me. I'm like, that was, and we'll get into this later, I hope, experience. That is an experience that I never wanted to have again.
Right. And it's a hard, you want to explain that to your kids and to yourself. I mean, there's the consequence that you don't want of how this guy sees you, and I'll never do business with you. I mean, that's the consequence, but really it's how you feel about yourself and see yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that consequence is the key word. The phrase I heard years ago from someone else is, you can choose to do anything you want, but you cannot choose the consequences of your choices.
That's right. Now, this Brooklyn's behind you on your screen there. This is your favorite
touring.
It is your favorite touring car.
It is. This is my third one. And I just think it is the last great Bentley. I really do. I think the lines are stunning. The only negative about the car, and there's a great video that one should watch about the Brooklyns being ripped around the track by Clarkson. You got to watch that sometime. The only problem with the car is I'm 6 foot, 170 to 75 pounds, a modest built guy. And if I get in that car, I look like I'm 12.
Right. Even at 6 foot.
I mean, I raise the seat up, I do all the stuff that gives me a little stature, but I still look like a little kid in a big car.
Giant coupe. And that's a 6.75 liter, all the torque in the world.
I think I might be wrong, 575 twin turbo, the 774 pound-feet torque.
Yeah.
Literally on that video, tire shredding, bomber. Awesome car.
Yeah, no effort to accelerate from zero. No drama, no RPMs, no noise.
Yeah, it's the ultimate sleeper. I mean, it's just so big and heavy. It's a lumbering thing, and it just goes. Yeah.
They do what they're supposed to do.
Yes, sir. And they, think about it. It wasn't the greatest time. We started our bank. We got approval from the FDIC to open the bank in December 23rd, 2008. You remember what was going on then?
AIG?
And a few others. And
GM bankruptcy, Chrysler bankruptcy.
Yes, it's like this Brooklands came out, 350 plus in the middle of a, horrible financial crisis. We started our bank. This was the scary part. I didn't know this. This is probably the biggest risk I took without knowing it until after the FDIC said, okay, you guys got your charter. When you start a bank, and I didn't understand this either, you basically, a community bank, you build the entire thing. You get the facility, you hire the people, you get the software, you are turnkey, ready to open, and then you wait for the state and the federal government to approve your charter. Well, in the middle of that moment, it was being discussed behind the scenes. They're not going to give charters anymore because of the meltdown. Right. So we got our charter, and everybody's like, "Whoo, wow, great. Yeah, we get to open the bank." And we did. And my friend, the CEO that invited me and talked me into being on this board, which I was the black sheep of the board, I assure you, the crazy farmer trucker car guy. He said, it's really good that we got our charter, because if we didn't, all the money that we spent to get to this point, which was a lot, it comes out of the investment that the board members put in. All the shareholders that committed, they get their money back. I'm like, you mean I could have lost all that? He goes, yeah, I thought I'd wait till. So I thought that could be interesting. Like, I had a friend that was on a board. He told me some great stories. And so, we had, I don't know, like 10 board members to start. So you're founding shareholder director, and you meet every month, and then you have a board meeting. And I was on loan committee every Tuesday. So certain loans I'd look at. And my goals were, as an investment, it should work. And as an experience, I'm going to get an opportunity to see some really high level people and their entire investment portfolios and their personal financial statements. Of course, you can't express any of that stuff to anybody else, but it was incredibly enlightening. Just the process of the FDIC. Like, if you ever question whether you trust a guy or a gal that's a board member at a bank, don't worry about it, because the FDIC digs through your past. I had to go back to the very first dollar I made, borrowed, and sold into the 70s.
Wow.
Before they would let me be a board member. So it's cool. But the bottom line is, we started a bank called First Green Bank. It was a bank with an environmental mission. Number one, make money, because we're a profit bank. Number two, try to encourage environmentally responsible projects in real estate. So that was the impetus, and it went well. We sold it. It took about twice as long to sell. We sold it to Seacoast, and it had about a third or fourth of the margin that we hoped for, but we didn't lose.
Oh, cool. Folks, for civilians not in the car business, sometimes I didn't lose is a great thing.
Is a win.
I didn't lose is a win. So that was happening concurrent and simultaneous to a lot of things you had going on. I mean, you didn't drop out while you were involved in the bank.
It was Deborah, my wife of 40 years, said to me in 2010, and Dana Mecum, the collector car auctioneer, who I met at his first auction. They both said, you think maybe you're doing a little too much? And what are you talking about? At that time, I was involved with Iron Planet in creating a subsequent to fail Iron Planet Motors digital platform, a precursor to Bring a Trailer that obviously wasn't as good as what they did. I was consulting with Dana Mecum on his wooden boat division that we created.
Was Iron Planet a way to bonify the background of cars, not quite Carfax, or am I way off on the wrong track?
No, you're on the wrong side. That was a True Frame.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Iron Planet was oh gosh. So here we go. It's just like dominoes. So I had this auctioneer in my lane in Orlando that sold cars for me. He stood next to me and auctioned my cars in the closed private auction business. And he was offered the opportunity to be the first auctioneer to sell military Humvees to the public.
Okay.
I went to that auction because he invited me, and I thought they brought too much money, so I didn't buy a single one. And about a month and a half later, he says, "Hey, we didn't sell enough of those Humvees." I said, "What do you mean you didn't sell enough?" Well, the Marine Corps that owned them wanted to be able to create enough dollars in the sale of these Humvees to acquire more equipment. And so I said, okay. He said, bottom line is we need to sell 300 more Humvees, and I've been allowed to sell 100 at a time to 3 people. Do you want to buy 100 Humvees? I said, I want to buy them. I don't have the money to buy them all, but I will find the money. Never turn a deal down because of money. So I bought 106 military Humvees from United Defense, and that created a business that rolled into me providing trade values on used construction equipment that the government owned on behalf of Caterpillar Tractor's Federal Defense Products Division. So here's Deborah and I. For about 4 or 5 years, we were the sole trading partners of every piece of equipment that the U.S. government was trying to trade in. And so all these big cat dealers, doing their thing. So here's little Deborah and I, buying 150 and 200 pieces at a time. And so that just evolved into, a more significant process, and, having the chance to acquire those in weird places, even Hawaii and Alaska. That was pretty interesting. So
but that's so not shocking, Scott. I mean, anyone who knows Scott Ailes, I mean, like if I had to get rid of 100 Humvees as opposed to your normal wholesaler buying a Camry, or, buying my Camry trade, my Cadillac trade, my Mercedes trade, and I'm not saying guys can't be more diverse, but if you had to go somewhere to get rid of something weird, I mean, you're the one I'd be thinking of.
It's fun. I mean, my dad taught me, I will tell you the driving force of me playing with specialty stuff, offshore championship boats and cranes and bulldozers and buses and planes. He taught me a really simple process of valuing used assets, and you would be shocked how often it works. And it's this simple. So I won't take credit for this. This is for my dad.
Okay.
Anything that is like new and is serviceable is worth half of new to an end user.
Okay.
So what we would do, or I took that the next step, and I said, okay, well, if a $100,000 brand new piece, according to his philosophy, is worth $50,000, as long as you can still buy parts and service it, and it looks like new, then I need to buy it for less than 50. So this, to be safe, the more obscure and weird it is, I'll just do half of half. So if I was buying a $100,000 piece for 25 grand, it was like new and serviceable, I should be able to sell it for 50.
You'd think.
And it works. It's shocking. I mean, it's like the baseline that I start with everything. And I had a discussion the other day with some folks with Black Book, the value guide people, and they're competitors with NADA and Kelley Blue Book. And I just say, look, I start from what stuff is selling for retail and back into it, where a lot of folks try to value from guides that took their data from actual wholesale transactions, which I think are a little behind the curve. So I've just always tried to be slightly ahead of the curve.
Well, you were ahead of the V Auto philosophy.
Yeah.
They said work from what you can sell for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you buy 100 Humvees?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I couldn't afford them. So I split them with a friend, Pete Mankin's Mercedes-Benz in Texas. He was a friend, and I said, hey, I can't afford to buy all these. So I bought half and he bought half.
So when you're selling 50 Hummers, 50 military Humvees, you're doing them one at a time. You're selling them retail to the end. You may have wholesaled a few. You may have sold a few to dealers. No, none.
No, because that's the question everybody said.
You
hey,
retailed 50 Hummers. Okay.
Yeah. So if I buy two, you give me a discount. I'm like, no, I can't get any more. So no, they're all the same.
Right.
price.
I can't do volume. I can't. Right.
Yeah. And they
I can't just keep replacing them. Can't replace.
I got made fun of because I put them at the local grass strip airport. I rented a piece of dirt with a little building. And then I put the black weed mat down first, that the commercial growers use. And then I bought a forklift to set each one of these up because none of them ran. They're all mothballed. The belts are off and they're all. So I just with a string, literally with a string, lined up 3 rows of 52 Humvees, and these guys would come out. Well, which one should I buy? I said, go pick one. I can't help you. I don't know. You can't start them or run them. I don't know what to tell you. You get, well, how am I going to know? I'm like, well, you're not. So, there's nowhere else to get them. We were the only ones that had them.
What were they worth? Do you remember? What were they?
I bought them. They were selling for 10 to 15 at that first auction. I thought, they're probably worth 20 all running and fixed up. But there's a lot of them being put in the market, maybe. So when he said buy 100, I said, well, if I buy 100, do I get a deal? It's like, well, just come look at them, pick out the ones you want, and then make us an offer. And so I remember the moment. It was a great moment because it was the day that they lifted the ban on flying after 9/11.
Oh.
So I was at the military base to look at these 2,000 Humvees. I had to pick 100 out of 2,000.
Oh my God.
And I'm in the parking lot waiting for my contact to show up there, Dean Eccles. And I'm just casually sitting there, staying warm, and the radio's playing. And coming right at me, like dive bombing toward me, is this plane. I'm like, wait a minute. There's not supposed to be any planes in the air.
Right, flying ban. Right.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on here? And then it's a crop duster. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's spraying poison on the military base, and I'm sitting in the parking lot.
It's anthrax.
I'm in the wrong spot. And then over the radio, the FAA releases the ban on flying. So this guy's just out trying to make a living for the first time in months.
Right.
There's just that elements of things. You're like, no, this is how I'm going to go. I'm going to get crop dusted in the parking lot of Albany military base.
So you didn't set these things up to be running.
I did personally.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. One at a time. I brought them in this little building, and like guys like you would be calling me. This was early 2000. You'd be calling me, wanting me to bid some Ferrari or Rolls Royce. And I would literally be on a creeper underneath the military Humvee, hooking all the mechanical stuff up. And once in a while, one of you guys would say, what are you doing? Like, you don't want to know. You wouldn't believe it.
So for the non-car dealer public, Scott, on top of someone who sells a lot online and in person, he's also what's known as a wholesaler. So when we in a dealership get a car that we're not going to keep, or we want to keep it, but we don't know what it's worth, we'll call someone like Scott and say, I have this factory 5 Ford GT40. I think of odd cars when I think of Scott.
Of course.
But it could be any car.
Yeah.
Could be, I've got this Buick, and either I can't sell it to you, but can you give me an idea what it's worth? And he might give me an idea out of relationship, but there's not a lot in it other than relationship for the guy in Scott's shoes, just giving people valuation ideas, because for him to make his living, he needs to buy something because he needs something to sell. And often it would be, what will you pay for this? And this is where he got into selling out. Because on both sides of a deal, it's really just a handshake.
Not even that. It's a verbal.
It's over the phone. It's verbal, but it's, it's talk about being only as good as your word. Whether you're on the buying end or selling end, and it's interesting because Scott's also been in the auction business. In the auction business, when you're the last person raising your hand that I'll pay $10,000 for that vase or $50,000 for that car or whatever you're buying, when it's all done, if you're the high bidder, you can't say I was just kidding.
Right. And that's really a good segue, Jeff, into the list. The list is a third grade acronym that I don't care for, but it was already a thing in the industry, so I didn't want to change the name. But it's an acronym, THA, the Highline Automobile List.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's cheesy. I didn't like it. In 1988, a guy came in my office in Clinton, Iowa. He put an 86-speed processor computer on my desk and plugged it into the telephone line. It made crazy noises. And I was instantly connected to 65 other dealers like me in the country. And we started reputation trading back and forth. When you said, hey, I'll take that car, that was as good as your best attorney getting it in writing and documenting it and notarizing it. I mean, that's the premise of our trading platform, originally IAX, International Auto Exchange, and credit goes to Adam Smith has passed away in 95, and Dan Hendricks is still around. They started the business in 1988, but they struggled with how to really make money with it. Nobody heard of SaaS, service as a subscription. That really didn't exist back in the 80s, but that's what they ultimately should have done. It failed by 95, and then the list started up again in 99 by one of the original members. And so it's like that hair club for men thing. We signed up on all the services, IAX and the list, and by 2004, we liked the company so much we bought it.
Well, I'm going to just complete one thing, and I'm not offended that I knew we were going to go off on tangents, and there was no way to get you on a call and not have it go that way.
Yeah, I'm shiny penny.
But what happens is sometimes, and this is for, like, let's say the viewing public with zero car experience. This is for the consumer. Sometimes the dealer will ask you, if I give you enough for your trade, will you make a deal with me? And the consumer gets frustrated because they think, why do I have to tell you I'm going to buy from you for you to give me your best price? Well, what's happening is if you've got this cement gray Suburban with 90,000 miles on it, and the dealer doesn't know how well that color will do, and is a little worried because it's got double the typical miles, etc. Yes, there's Kelly Blue Book and NEDA, but no one knows in the end what somebody's going to pay for something. They'll call a guy like Scott Ailes. Scott will say, if I give you enough for it, can I have it?
Yeah.
Now, again, the consumer, the in the business consumer might say, again, what is that? Why does Scott need to know if he can have it for him to tell you what he thinks it's worth? Well, there's two numbers. There's one number is what he thinks it's worth, and he can do that in 2 seconds while he's laying on a creeper underneath the Humvee. And then the other number is that he might have a customer for it, or a dealer with a customer for it that he's willing to call and willing to get that customer to commit to it, subject to seeing, and get a lot of people and a lot of moving parts, but commitments. And the fella that got mad at him over selling, rightfully mad at him or disappointed with him, sure, or how about not even emotional, just I can't do business with him anymore, about you sold me out, is that he's making commitments to others and managing his business based on Scott's word and that he's going to get that car. Scott gets a higher bidder later, sells it to the higher bidder. Now you might be thinking, well, God, if I had my own car to sell and I can get another 1,000, I would do it. Well, that starts turning into your word versus money and also relationship. If you're a end user, if you're someone that's just selling your own car every 3 years, you're not worrying about any ongoing relationship. And if you get someone that'll give you $1,000 more for your car or $10,000 more for your house, even though you already gave someone your word, you might say, what's the big deal? It's only business, it's only money. And I'm not here to get judgmental on you. But in the end, it still is a little bit about, or depending on who you are, a lot about, you're only as good as your word. you're only as good as your handshake, even if it's a stranger. But in Scott's position, this is someone that he's doing business with ongoing. And for $1,000, he severed a relationship that he could have done another 10 deals with or another 1,000 deals with.
Oh, yeah. Lots.
Yeah, we'll never know.
No. Yeah.
So on the list, THALIST, that you see on Scott's shirt, this was a dealer community that was buying and selling cars to each other online. It was pretty much, here's what I need, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I have for sale.
Right.
And it was all like almost like old-fashioned malware looking. I can't describe it. That's not the word. But it looked like code almost. Not pretty.
Yeah, it was very, very basic. Yeah.
DOS almost. Not quite, no, but like old-fashioned website. Website. And in this, it was. We were all afraid. The young people today do everything online, Amazon, but we were all afraid to do business on the internet initially. And when the list came out before Scott owned, it would be dealers, and there was an advisory board or a membership board. And if you got in a beef, like this guy promised he'd sell it to me, or this guy promised he'd buy it from me, or this guy that it had perfect tires, but it doesn't, whatever, then you could get this board of people involved. They'd
arbitrate it. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, you actually helped me on a deal through the list. I don't know if you remember. I had a Ferrari ordered for a customer. I want to say 360 Spider. I want to say it could have been the next one. I gave that dealer a $10,000 deposit for the customer that I was representing. I remember that I was working at a boat show in Sarasota with a boat manufacturer buddy of mine that just hired me for the weekend to meet customers and whatever, and wear his golf shirt like yours with the logo on it. And I remember in the middle of this that all of a sudden we couldn't get a chassis number. In the end, they'd sold me out and gave my order slot probably to someone that would pay more, even though they'd committed to me. And I actually called you directly. And you advised before we got the list panel involved, tribunal, to go up against his DMV bond. You gave me that advice.
Yeah.
And I did make that phone call, and it did clear it up very quickly.
Yeah. That's that one comment you said in there, worth more. That was probably, Jeff, in all the decades. It's like I say this humbly, because people trusted. One thing I would say about myself, I credit the people that invested in me through the years to make me who I am. Sure, I'm responsible for making the decisions to do the right thing, but I really credit the people that have influenced me. So that's, anytime I say something that sounds boastful, give it to them. They're the ones responsible. So, but through the years, 40 years of trading and $250 million worth of sales, the thing I heard the most, and it's really kind of silly and ironic, you or someone like you would call and say, what can you be? We're trying to trade for this car. We need, well, you say, is that all it's worth?
Right.
And my immediate response, once I kind of figured out a fair and diplomatic response, was, well, I hope not.
Right. Otherwise, I'm overpaying.
How am I going to make money if it's
right.
not? It should be worth a little more. So, but it would catch people off guard. Is that all it's worth? No, I hope not.
That was very straightforward.
You want to know what life is all about? The next birthday or Christmas especially, everybody distribute the gifts that they're getting, go into separate rooms, close the doors, and open the gifts, and tell me how much fun that is.
Right.
It's not fun because you don't get to see, you're not giving. You don't get to see the reaction. When you are giving to someone else, that's the essence of fulfillment in life.
Well, we know that biblically, if you're ever down, just go help someone with something and you'll be up. And then I'm a recovery guy. I've been sober 25 years. And, we have a saying, call one, help two. So sometimes like you think, oh, I don't want to be a pain and call the guy, but the guy taking your call, administering advice or helping is helping himself too.
Of course, yeah.
So I think you're interesting. Let's go back to the beginning. Over the years, heard you express your life. It seems like there's this visceral component of some machine involved. It
Yeah,
could be the boat that I can't think of the name on now. That was in the barn up north.
Yeah, there's
Truck, flathead, tractors.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it does revolve around machinery. It doesn't have to necessarily be a moving vehicle, but
That's right.
I cost my parents the equivalent of a college education taking things apart and not getting them back together at first.
Right.
My dad would come home. It's like, your bike's 2 months old. Why did you take it apart? I'm like, well, I thought I could clean it better.
Right.
So yeah,
I have a son like that.
I just love it. And it's at the start, I mean, I had these ridiculous firsts. I started mowing the grass at 6 years old on a 6 horsepower mower. I have a picture of me on the mower in the back here. I drove my first vehicle. It was a 74 Ford F-250 Highboy, which is all the rage now, right? My dad bought it too. And I drove that in 1973, so I was 11. And then I drove my first semi, the Kenworth truck we had, at 14 using a school permit. So I was driving to school in my 71 Mach 1, the first car I bought off the street that wasn't for sale because I liked it, from a house painter. But I was actually transporting things across state lines at 14 and 15 years old. I got pulled into a scale once. For those that don't know, you see the trucks pull off, they get weighed on the interstate, So you'd have to pull in there. You can't just go by. Here I am with literally no driver's license, but a school permit that allows me to drive to school back and forth because I live 7 miles out in the country. And sometimes these scale house operators will ask you to you pull your truck around back, come in and present all of your documents, right? Your permits and all this stuff. So I would just go in. This happened to me 3 times. I'd go in and I'd lay all this stuff. We had all the stuff. And I had my school permit that looked like a license. And they'd get around to my license and they'd be like, son, this is a school permit. You got anything else? I'm like, no. And every time they slide everything in a pile, just get out of here. I don't want to see you till you're 21, the proper age to be traveling across state lines with the truck. And that was when you could do it. You can't do that today, but that was in the 70s. It was. No. I saw the whole country from behind the windshield of a Kenworth truck that I stripped down and painted, and I hauled heavy equipment with lowboy trucks and trailers, and it was awesome. I had a blast.
You don't think that's interesting? Come on.
I had in the years of hauling heavy equipment, I lost one piece. I had a crane I was loading one day that fell off the trailer while I was in it, and that was exciting. I've had multiple near-death experiences in and around machinery, and most of them by myself, in places where there was nobody around. And if something were to happen, I did 1,000 acres of custom combining because we had a farm. Okay. And we were going to lose the combine to the finance company because we weren't doing well on the farm. So okay. I just started letting all my friends know, hey, can I come combine your fields and you can pay me? So I made enough to pay off the combine that year. But in the process, I was like pointed into a field once and oiling and getting the combine ready for that day. And I did something you shouldn't do. I swung myself around the front of the cab and almost fell into the feeder house while it was running. And I actually pushed myself off from that reel thing in the front that goes like this, grab the other mirror, and it's just one of those moments, instinctively you do certain things. And as the moment passed, I'm like, oh, that was really stupid.
Oh my God.
But so, and my dad, he's so cool. My dad was such a character. He bought 2 new Kenworth trucks in 1976, right?
Okay.
So, and they were polished out, chrome, black, white stripes, and all this stuff. So they went to pick them up at the dealership, Quad City Kenworth in the Midwest. And he doesn't come home for a while. So my mom goes looking for him. Well, so he thought might be fun to go around bar hopping and, show off his new trucks. So
makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So my dad's bellied up to the bar somewhere in Moline, Illinois. And he's, bragging about his trucks and blah, blah, blah. And, round of drinks for everybody, hey, And this guy says, so those trucks out there, those are your trucks? He goes, yeah, you just picked them up, bought them brand new. He goes, yeah. So you're the owner. He goes, yeah. He goes, well, there's some woman out there in a Mark V Lincoln slamming into the side of one of them. So my mom is out in the parking lot, bam,
oh my gosh.
She's upset because he's out bar hopping and the new trucks didn't come home. So she's driving his Lincoln Mark V plowing into the side of the truck.
And by the way, what a beautiful car, a Mark V.
Oh, yeah. That's what I learned to drive. That's it. I mean, my dad gave me the keys to a 74 Mark IV and let me go on a date when I was in, hang on a second, 7th grade. How old are you in 7th grade?
Kindergarten is age 6.
13? I didn't have my school permit yet. So I showed up at my then girlfriend's house, got out of this black Lincoln Mark IV, walked up to the door like, this ain't going to work.
Right.
And the dad comes to the door. Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you, Scott Ailes. I'm here to pick up your daughter, Karen. Okay. Looks out the car. And he didn't say a word. She came to the door. I said goodbye. I opened the door. I let her in. We backed out and away we went. Went to dinner.
That's not a Mark V, but there's cars that if I could ever find, and obviously you were involved with Myers Manx Doom Buggy was on that list for me a long time.
Yeah.
But another car is a 69 Mark III.
Yeah. Great car.
Another one my dad had.
Yeah.
Black with red. This was the car, if you remember, you look in the center rearview mirror and it had indicators in the top of the headliner facing forward from the back.
Yeah. There was so much cool about those cars. I mean, he had LTDs first, and then he got his first Lincoln in 1970. He bought a town car, coupe, and then he bought a Mark in 73 or 4. And my dad was like a classic entrepreneur. He bought and sold cranes and bulldozers, mostly cranes though, and end loaders too. But it was like this. It was like he'd be on top of the world. Like we had, I was like 2 acres, 10-acre field with the equipment. And if he was like, he had a down month or a series of months, it was in the 70s, there's a tough time. So the propane ran out for heat at the farmhouse. We came home from dinner, got no propane. So he calls the propane delivery guy. He goes, I'm not coming out there. You didn't pay your bill last month. So
nice.
So what does my mom do?
Sell something.
No, she goes in the closet and covers all the 3 kids up with her fur coats.
Oh, right. Okay. All right.
You can't buy propane because you didn't pay your bill, but you got fur coats to stay warm.
Well, that's a classic sales / entrepreneurial personality.
Yeah.
Celebrating and needing to withdraw. That's for sure. God knows I've bought a lot of sandbags and tossed a lot of sandbags over the side.
Yeah, I mean that's how it started though, Jeff. We had the trucking business and at 19 years old, the trucking business went broke for a lot of reasons. 1 truck and 2 trucks was great. My dad and I drove 1 each. We did well, but we bought 18 more and nobody else will work like you work. And so we failed. And so at 19, I was vice president of the trucking company that failed. So the first bit of business that I got to do, and Deborah was with me at this time, is I got to negotiate my debt down. So the very first financial thing I ever did as a taxpayer was take on a sizable debt that I had to pay off to preserve my credit. And I vowed that's not ever going to happen again. So that was a hell of a lesson to learn at 19.
Well, it's got to happen to you. You can get all the lectures you want, but
that's real world right there.
Yeah.
But I went to work for Ford. I bought a XJ6C, 77 XJ6C Jag coupe.
Yep.
From a dealer. And I called and said, listen, our trucking company went broke and I appreciate you selling me the car. I need a job. I'm going to come in and sell cars on Monday. And my wife's in the background like, can't just
say no, right?
You can't just tell them you're going to come work there. And he said, okay, come on in. And I did. I went up and trained and I was selling Datsuns and Jaguars and Mercedes within a week.
How did you do?
So it was interesting. By accident, because I'm a car nut, I became enamored with certain pieces. The Maximas, I really thought was a great car. The new 86.5 Nissan hardbody pickups had just come out.
Yeah.
And I love the diesel Mercedes. So because I was so into those vehicles, I was constantly speccing them out like how I would want them.
Right.
And accidentally realized that I became the master salesperson for those. And
now, did you sell a lot of cars to the spec that you would have?
Yeah, I did. Because
Okay.
I was a believer. And so what I after about 20 years of being in the business, I did that for a year and change, and I went off on my own because I can do this on my own. And so I kind of realized after about 15, 20 years, I did gravitate toward things that I believed in.
Sure.
And so as I distinguished that by statistics, geez,
Right.
the cars I'm making the most money on, or the equipment, or the this or that, or the things that I believed in personally, I should probably try to focus on, selling things that I believe in only. And so occasionally I get an oddball or a commodity piece, but early on, I have always had a flair for non-commodity assets.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because I would love to ask you, what are some of the odd... That's how I think of you.
Yeah, thanks. Odd.
Yeah. But like if I would get something in or need to know what something's worth that I couldn't ask, well, you'd be the one I'd go to ask.
Right. And that works.
You've had everything.
So
You've had everything.
Yeah. So the probably craziest stuff, the 97 offshore championship boat with triple 1,500 horse supercharged motors called INXS.
Okay.
I bought and sold that twice. It was sent to me on a lark. John Blackburn and Steve Uli in Carmel, Indiana. Uli and Blackburn, they had a dealership, and they sent me this email like, ha, look at this crazy guy that wants to sell this boat. He's sending it to all these car dealers. And I laughed and said, how much is it?
Right.
And they're like, no. We just sent it for fun. I said, no, we need to buy this. And so I bought that boat and sold it at the wholesale auction. Had a blast with it. I never put it in the water. I was definitely afraid of that thing. And then bought it back 6 months later because the guy that ended up with it, the retail buyer ended up with it in Charlotte, got caught with a mistress.
Mm.
And that was the only asset that his wife didn't know about.
Okay.
So he called me, says, listen, I got to sell this thing. It's the only cash I can come up with that, I said, well, okay. So I bought it back and then resold it at the auction again. So from the boating side, either that or the Midnight Lace 44-foot boat that Deborah and I lived on in the 90s, or certainly the Riva Super Aquarama, the only one with twin 396s. And that was a really cool boat that we felt like it was worth more than people realized. And it took two years for us to bring that to pass. But we did set the record in the wooden boat category of the most expensive boat sold at public auction. And then, of course, I got the, "Oh, Ailes, you're so lucky" speech from everybody.
Right.
So we did it again. We sold it. Next year, we sold the last wooden Riva ever made for the son of one of the two founders of Sony Electronics. On the car side, golly, the Aston Martin Vulcan was definitely a high point. One of 24 cars built. Sold that to a guy in Saudi Arabia. We took that to the track in Austin, Texas, about 4 or 5 years ago. Amazing experience. That if you don't know what an Aston Martin Vulcan is, there's a Chris Harris video. If you Google Chris Harris Vulcan, you'll learn about what that is. If you can watch that video and not get excited, you're not a car person.
Okay, that'll be the test.
Yeah, so that's the car side. There's been many and really interesting stuff. but that definitely is one. Gosh, on the bus side, I bought a 1-year-old Prevost Marathon motorhome that had a little smoke damage. And
what's a little smoke damage?
Well, it was in a building where there was a fire like 100 feet away. And so the guy turned it in for insurance, and I ended up with it. And so we worked on that and cleaned it up. And we actually sold that at one of the first Mecum collector car auctions at Kissimmee, Florida. And a lark, Deborah broke her back on a snowmobile in 2005. We were the crazy kids from Florida. I pull up to the trailhead in Michigan with my Florida license plates and an enclosed trailer and unload our 4 snowmobiles and go snowmobiling. But instead of renting one, I would just buy one initially and sell it before I left. I go up to Michigan. We spend a place for a week and a half. We'd rent a house on the Osable River. And then I'd go to the library in Grayling, Michigan, and I'd put the snowmobile. I bought it brand new. I'd put it on eBay and sell it before I left. And I usually broke even or made a few $100.
Amazing. Now, I know people say the Scott Ailes luck, but I mean, come on.
No, you know what? It's just, you've seen the buy real estate, no money down infomercials, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I did in 1987. I went to the Sheridan Inn in Davenport, Iowa on the river. And I went to the Mike and Irene Malin buy real estate, no money down seminar. I bought the package. I had no money. I used my credit card. I went home. I read the thing cover to cover. And one thing it clicked with me, read the Wall Street Journal for notices of distress assets. And the next day I found an apartment complex in Clinton, Iowa being sold at sheriff's auction in 2 weeks. And so I got no money, no job. My wife is cutting hair, supporting us. And I call this attorney like I'm a millionaire. Yeah, tell me about the property. Can you send me a package? Yeah, sure. So he sends me the package. And this is something that I'll try to convey to people. I grabbed the phone to call a guy that I met once, 3 times, to call him to see if he'd be interested. And I hung it up the first 2 times.
Okay.
And the 3rd time I just said, what do I got to lose? Hey, we met at my dad's Valentine's Day party. We talked for a few minutes. I know you do real estate. I think I might have found something. Oh, what is it? So 2 weeks later, fast forward, he calls me after we'd gone up and looked at it. 12 acres in Clinton, Iowa. 206 apartments. It was an ex-Army hospital built out of brick masonry. It was a beautiful facility. We go to the auction. He invites me to come with him. We go to the auction, and he buys this property for $210,000.
Okay.
200 apartments.
Right.
The TV's there, blah, blah, blah. Da, da, da. He goes, listen, I don't want to talk to TV. I'm not that kind of person. You go talk to TV and just tell them, here's what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. So I still don't have a job. I said, sure. So I'm the front. I'm his front to the newspaper and the media. And later that night, he says, hey, you want to manage this place and we'll turn it around? It was like 23% occupancy. So within a few years, we had it ramped up to 96% occupancy.
Was that full time for you?
That was full time. I was an apartment manager. Most important principle I learned about renting or selling things in that time was if you are full as an apartment complex, you're not charging enough.
Okay.
You should never be full. All right. So in 1989, we watched an early CNN broadcast of Hurricane Hugo in the Carolinas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I saw these boats laying around. I'm like, oh, what do they do with those? So I called the guy that I sold the Mercedes to that was an insurance guy. I said, what's the story with the boats like after the hurricane that I saw yesterday? He goes, oh, they just round up buyers and get rid of the stuff as soon as they can. And I'm like, that sounds like an opportunity.
Right.
And so I commit to my friend that we did this apartment complex together. It was his money, of course. If there's ever a hurricane, we should go buy those boats. So fast forward 3 years later, the day before Hurricane Andrew hits, he calls me. He says, hey, I got the tickets. Like, I'm in the middle of my, thought process about living in Iowa and managing the complex that we're both at. I said, what are you talking tickets? Where are we going? Florida. It's going to be a hurricane. We're going to go buy some of those boats. Remember, we agreed. Like, okay.
So the hurricane's on the way and he has the ticket.
We get the ticket. So we flew to Orlando the day after and drove to Naples, went across Alligator Alley, and we were right in the thick of Hurricane Andrew the day after. And we bought 46 boats from insurance companies. It was just it was a riot. I mean, we created a company that didn't exist, LEAH, Leasing Equipment and Handling, LEA Limited. We just created, and we would call the insurance companies, okay, what do you got selling today? And they basically would set up a catastrophe office in a hotel, and you go to the office and they'd have a whiteboard and they said, we're going to sell the rug room at Bloomingdale's at 2. We got a marine supply store. We're going to sell at 3. And we got these 3 boats at this marina that we're going to take bids on. And you go to, like we bought Hallmark card store, Sally Beauty supply store. We bought the whole contents. We bought a couple of marines. You bid a percentage of the retail inventory at the time of the damage. So they say, here's what was in the store. We missed the rug room at Macy's by like $1,000.
Okay.
And so we bought these boats, and then it's like, okay, well, now we all have all these boats. I need a place to put them. So I cut a deal with a marina guy and New River Marina in Fort Lauderdale, and we moved all the boats there, and we just started working. And I spent 6 months there. I'm like, I spent winter of 1992, 93 in Florida. I'm like, what the hell do I want to go back there for?
Perfect.
No kids. And so, one of the best stories that came from that is the day after about 2 months of being around this marina owner, Deborah and I walked in his office, and I had this whole skit plan. We acted like we were EPA agents that were undercover the whole time. So we walked in his office, sat down, and I said, I won't say his name. So Mr. Marina owner, I'm sorry. This is, my name is I changed my name. My name is Agent Marson, and this is Agent Wilcox. And unfortunately, you've been under investigation for the last 2 months, and we're going to have to present you with our findings. And just like the blood is draining out of the face.
Oh my God.
He's just having a coronary right in front of me, because he's like doing stuff there that little paint on the ground and, oil and gas and stuff. This went on for like 10 minutes.
Oh my, terrible.
I tortured him. It was so, and then I finally told him, he's like, oh, I mean, it was just like, relax. But that's how we ended up in Florida. So once in Florida, a little bit of money, not much, a little bit of money, I started letting my friends from IAX know, hey, you now have a set of eyes in Florida that you can trust. And I leveraged those relationships. And so that's, the key to any contentment in my business life. I would point toward those that invested in us. And when we responded and picked those things that we thought were admirable and what they did, and then for us to serve other people in that same capacity, it's a recipe for success. It hasn't made me a billionaire, but I'm content and comfortable, and I love what I do.
So these boats, I'm curious. I got kind of stuck. So you'd never bought boats before. Your partner buys these tickets.
Oh, hold on a minute. That's not right. So my dad was a boat guy. My dad said there's 2 kinds of people in the world: boaters and non-boaters. So we grew up on the Mississippi River, had boats since I was 5 years old. Deborah and I actually had a wood 46-foot Chris Craft Constellation in our late teens, early 20s that we restored. So we were definitely boaters.
For sure. And there's a boat that I don't know. I remember a story just in the last couple of years about it. That was a boat that you grew up with and lost and got it back or sold it and got.
It's the boat that we have behind the house right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a 17-foot Century Resorter.
Beautiful.
And Deborah and I bought that from a father and son that used to do V-boat drag racing. And so they had the motor turned around as a V-drive, which wasn't proper for that boat. So when I bought it in the mid-'80s, I restored it, turned it around, put a mahogany deck on it instead of vinyl. And I sold it to my dad like in the early 90s. And then, so this is how classic my dad is. Early on, my sister is 10 years younger. My brother and I are a year apart. So there's three of us. At one holiday event, he says, listen, kids, you need to understand there's not going to be any will. There's not going to be, I'm spending all of it. So
okay.
Don't count on anything, right? And God bless him, he did. So much so that when we lost him about 6 years ago, remember, I'm a board member at a bank, so I understand how banks work. About a week after he passes, I get a phone call from the president of a bank in Andalusia, Illinois. Hey, this is blah, blah, blah. I just want to let you know that we had a relationship with your father, and we're sorry to hear he passed. Well, thank you. It's nice of you to say so. We have this loan here that is outstanding. So
thanks, Dad.
He not only spent it all, he borrowed on the stuff that he had. So we had to buy the stuff back.
Beautiful.
So I did negotiate with him and bought the stuff. And that's how we got the boat back. Yeah.
That's a beautiful boat.
It's fun. Yeah, 17 foot with a 454 is probably a little bit crazy.
Beautiful. Now, years ago, I don't remember how it came up, but you bought my 31 Ford, which was a fake 32 B model.
Nobody.
31 Ford Highboy Flathead.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you ended up doing with it, but at the truly, I'll find out now. But you were putting flatheads in tractors, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we had Ford. Because I used to farm. We had an 8 and a 9N Ford that has a little 4-cylinder. We had an International 450 gas diesel. It's an engine that you start on gas and you throw a lever, and then it converts the same motor into a diesel. So it's got a carburetor on this side of the block and a fuel injection pump on this side. That was a cool tractor. And
interesting.
Then we had a Minneapolis Moline 706 4-wheel drive that was like this big locomotive. Like my brother was voted the biggest partier in his high school senior class because he had 3 keggers the last week of school. And in one of the keg beer parties, somebody came running, hey, Joe's down there beating the crap out of your tractor. I said, which one? He said, the Minneapolis. I said, no, he's not. He's just beating his own knuckles up. There's a cast iron front grill. I'm not worried about that.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so the tractors, that was probably the Ford V8 tractors. I had 3 of those, actually. And then I actually visited a guy in Michigan that put a jet engine in a Ford tractor.
Oh, my goodness.
And it just got donated to the Ford Museum. But I love flatheads. My first vehicle was a 42 Ford pickup that my dad gave me that he bought in North Dakota for $500. And that's a rare truck because in 42, that's when you either had to have a farm or went to the military because you couldn't just buy a passenger vehicle from 42 to 45. They didn't make them.
Right.
So that was my first vehicle. So I was always a fan of flatheads, and I never had a flathead street rod. So that's the main reason I bought yours. And if I didn't tell you the story, I will humbly share with you now and any listeners, all 3 to 5 of them. I haven't lost them by now. That car sat in my building as a garage art for about 4 months because it didn't have the intelligence to really figure out the reason it wasn't starting is because it didn't have enough gas in it.
Oh, my goodness. That thing ran perfect.
Oh, I know it. And it was that classic, like my dad at that time was alive, are you sure you got enough gas? Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, it's got gas in it. What are you talking about? Nope. No gas.
My son still asks about it.
I sold it in California. I took it out to a Mecum collector car auction in California, and can't remember the people that bought it, but they called about 6 months later and love every bit of it. Yeah, enjoyed it. And the other one was when I did a speaking engagement at Sardi's restaurant.
Okay.
They have the Chowder Club. I think it was Walter Cronkite or somebody in the 60s started a car club at Sardi's that meets every month. They call it the Chowder Club, and they have a speaker come in for 15 minutes. And if he goes on too long or she, they throw dinner rolls at him.
Okay.
So the upstairs, the Sardi's with the caricatures all over the wall, Manhattan. So I did this speaking engagement there, and it went well. I didn't get any dinner rolls thrown at me, but I was representing Mecum Auction at the time, just trying to introduce, how the auction business works. And we had a blast at that. When the guy called me, he said, yeah, we got you booked for January. I'm like, okay. I said, by the way, who's speaking this month? Who am I following? Let's see. Henry Ford II. I'm like, really?
Nice. You met Dana 30 years before that.
Yeah.
How did you meet? You said at his first auction.
I consigned an 84 Corvette to his first auction. And that auction, it was his equipment for the auction fit in a 6x6 enclosed trailer. And it was he and Patty Mecum, his wife, then and now, sitting behind the card table and chairs, checking people in and cars.
Unbelievable.
And I don't know anybody else. If they see his shows and see what they do and see the volume and all the pageantry, and I don't know. I mean, he really is an amazing car guy, and he's driven like very few I've ever seen. He has earned his place in the hobby and the industry as much as anybody that I know.
Now, did you work with him in that auction?
No, I sold a car at that auction. So
I mean, I'm sorry. Forgive me. When I say that auction, I mean in the Mecum auction. I mean, over time, were you involved?
Yeah. Well, what happened is, what cemented our relationship, we talk about reputation. He sold that 84 Corvette for me, and I'm just a kid. I was 24 years old. And he called me the next day and said, hey, I got a problem. The guy that bought that car at the auction won't pay for it. And I don't know what I'm doing. I said, well, what does that mean to me?
Yeah. What are you in the collections department?
I sold it. He goes, well, let me spend some time on it and see if I can get it sold for you. And 8 hours later, at the end of the day, he says, hey, I got the car sold, so I'm going to send you your check. Now, he didn't know me from Adam. He could easily have said, tough luck, kid, come get your car. But that meant a lot to me. And so, we committed when we were going to do collector car auctions and sell cars or try to buy, we would do it with him. And so that relationship grew over the years. And when I couldn't get any other auction company to consign my, what I figured was $1 million wooden Riva boat, he agreed to let me be the headline for the Kissimmee auction for that piece. And I promoted it as best I can. And we sold that boat that the pundits and the experts felt it was worth $400,000, maybe $500,000. We sold that boat for $825,000. And so my experience was I had that boat for sale for 1.5 years and no one would even come look at it. So I said to him the day after, if I'm having this experience, I can't sell my wood boat. Must be other people having the same experience. So we created that day the wood boat auction platform for Mecum, and we sold about 150 wood boats over the next year.
Did you have reserve on that Riva?
I did have a reserve, but I was cheating a little bit. I got the blessed phone call that you always hope for as a seller. The boat sold on a Saturday. On Friday morning, I got a phone call. Hello, this is Captain ABC of the yacht, blah, blah, blah. My owner has just told me about a boat that he would like me to buy on his behalf. How much is it? I said, well, it's an auction. You have to come and bid. Well, how much is the reserve? They said, well, the reserve, I can't disclose. He goes, well, just tell me how much it is. What's $750? Okay, well, he'll buy it for $750. I said, well, he still has to come. You have to participate in the auction. Okay, we'll be there in the morning. What do I need to do? I said, well, you need to give the auction company a deposit. So they wired a deposit in an hour.
Okay.
A big deposit. So when he got there, I said, look, let me explain what's going to happen. I have a $750 reserve on this boat. I'm not going to sell it for $725, $740. $750 is my number. So, most people don't pay attention to the contract they sign when they are a bidder at an auction. But the auction house has the right to bid on behalf of the owner. And I always tell people, look, don't get offended by the fact that the auction company might be bidding against you. You're the only buyer. An auction is just a fast-paced negotiation. That's all it is.
Right.
So you could say, oh, it's not fair. I bid 600, nobody else bid, and then the auction company raised the bid, so I had to pay 750. Well, it's a reserve auction. I'm not selling it less than 750. So you're not getting it at 6. You're not getting it at 7. You're not getting it 7 and 25. You got to pay 750 to own this. So I told the guy straight out, you have to bid 750 before they will announce that the reserve is lifted.
Right.
And then you'll know you're getting it, and I know it's sold. That's how it works. So that's what he did.
So with an auction, let's talk about this for a minute. So with an auction house bidding, this is, I mean, I know that in unethical situations, it can happen where you're bidding against the Coke machine or whatever. Yeah. But in properly done and acceptable, generally acceptable is when there's a reserve.
Yep.
If you're not to reserve yet, and by the way, for the listening audience that doesn't know what a reserve is, an absolute sale, a no reserve auction means that wherever the bidding stops, it stops, and the seller's committed to sell.
Correct.
The auction house does not bid in that case unless they want to be a buyer.
Correct.
Okay. And by the way, sometimes the auction house is a buyer.
Sometimes they are.
Yeah, they inventory or the owner wants it.
Yeah.
But in a reserve auction, if they're bidding, they're raising the bid, but they're only doing it until it hits reserve. And if they didn't, it's not selling anyway.
Correct. There have been many times where, for instance, if you were selling an asset for $100,000, that's your reserve, and my bid competitively in the auction arena is $85,000, the auction company will work both me, the buyer, and you, the seller, simultaneously. That's why you will see the seller on the auction block in close conversation with what we call the grinder, the person that's grinding on them to lower their reserve. So again,
they want a transaction. They want a transaction to happen. They're trying to talk to you.
Bring the two people together. If they can't get the buyer here and they can't get the seller there, maybe they can meet them both in the middle. So there have been many times where, like, for instance, if I was high bidder at 70, you want 100, and I sense that if I bid a little more, you might be encouraged and lower and meet me there. I might say, raise my bid. I'm going to bid against myself because I know I'm not going to get it at 70. So I might say, okay, put me in at 80. And then that gives the auction house some ammunition to go to you, the seller, and say, Mr. Sterns, we just moved our only buyer from 70 to 80. Don't miss this opportunity. Well, it's a little bit of a grind, but it's true. So,
and this can happen while the bidding is occurring, or it can happen after they announce no sale and the car's gone and they're still talking to you behind the scene. The seller.
Correct. Yeah. So it's, I think for some people, they're so suspicious and concerned about being taken advantage of. If you go to an auction and resolve a value that you want to buy a vehicle for, or even more critically and difficult, determine what you will sell your vehicle for. Like, that's the hardest thing for people, right? If you say, you've dealt with it in the car business as a dealer, what do you want for your car? Well, what's the person first think? The highest number they could possibly get, right? What do you want for your car? You want to have a mental exercise that'll really help you understand what your reserve or your selling price or the number you would accept on a trade-in. This is from Dana Mecum 30 years ago. When you're trying to determine what you will pay for, what your reserve is on a car you're selling, now think about this for a minute. If you didn't own it, okay?
Right. That's
what
a big.
Would you pay for it today? I mean, I've seen people like glaze over, like, uh-oh.
Right.
That's a different number.
It's a different number when you don't own it.
That's right. And so that's a real internal, don't have to talk about it to anybody. It's a really good way internally to decide, okay, if I sold, like, I think my car's worth $50,000 and my neighbor wants it and he buys it for $50,000 and I'm relieved, right? I got what I wanted.
Right.
The next day, I should never have done that. No fault of yours. It was my mistake. I shouldn't have bought it. I want to get rid of it. I don't want to call anybody else. I'm embarrassed. What will you pay for it? That's the real number that should be your reserve.
Now, but you've been, unless I misunderstand, you've been a proponent of no reserve more often.
Yep.
When I talk to you. And yeah. I think that warrants an explanation, because there's a lot of people that think, isn't that risky?
It is. It's risky, but you can manage risk in all aspects of life, right? So how I've managed risk on no reserve is volume. Because the law of averages will always work in your favor. If you take 10 or more collector cars to an event and sell them, collectively, the amount of money that you get on gross will probably be right at your number. But you'll have swings within those 10 vehicles. One will be 20% high and one will be 20% low. And you'll never be able to figure out beforehand which one is going to go that way. The real risk of no reserve on a single piece, which is probably the most important part for, the average person, you have to be certain that the people that would attend that platform, whether it's digital auctions, bring a trailer, cars and bids, things like that, or physical auctions, are they known for that brand, mark, or make? Like, if you're going to sell a Porsche on Bring a Trailer, it's really crazy not to go no reserve, because they bring the money and you can count on it, and you're going to get market value for that car at that time because they have the eyes. If you're going to sell a 57 Chevy and you can sell it on Friday afternoon at a Mecum auction, Indy, Kissimmee, the bigger venues, you're going to get what it's worth, because it's telling everybody the car's absolutely for sale. I can be the high bidder and owner.
I think where no reserve wins is it brings more competitors. It brings more people bidding against each other. They say to themselves, there's no way I'm going to let this thing sell for 20 grand. I think it's worth 50 grand. It's at 20 grand. So I'm going to start bidding on it. I'm going to get involved.
Yeah.
A thing that I've noticed among bidders at auctions is if they don't make the first bid, they're rarely the high bidder. I
have bought and sold a lot of vehicles at auction. And it's probably since the first thing I ever bought at an auction was 1975, a set of bull horns at a farm auction, right? And whatever my heart rate was doing that day when I really wanted those and I got them for $20, even today, at an auction or digitally, I promise you, you put a little heart monitor thing on my finger and I'm in play and I'm high bidder and there's only 30 seconds left, I guarantee you my heart rate is the same as those very first bullhorns I bought 40 years ago. This is a big part of my career these days, is trying to help people recognize a perspective that I have about the difference between investing and having an experience. And, very few people, if you go and have a good vacation and you come home, you don't say, oh, geez, I lost my ass on that vacation. You don't. And if you buy a good car that you want, it does what you wanted it to do, and you sell it, and you get $5,000 less for it when you're done, you didn't lose your ass on that car. You paid $5,000 for a great experience, the experience that you wanted. I think, unfortunately, too many people get caught up in the hierarchy of what matters in their experience of collector cars and even day-to-day cars. Be sure to put experience at the top of the list, because you can make money on a car that doesn't give you the experience you want, which is going to cause you to go try to find that experience again because you didn't have it. You might have made money on it.
There's a difference naturally between an investment and an experience, no doubt. Like if I found the black and red 69 Mark III, I don't want to say I'd pay anything, but as long as I could afford the expense,
you pay more.
The smell, the memory, the certain things that it did, the sound. I mean, whatever it is that matters to me, I'm in absolute heaven. When I bought that 31 Ford that you ended up with, I bought it and sold it to you for around the same number. But right after I bought it at Amelia Island, had low oil pressure.
Yeah.
And I ended up putting it in Leldon Blackwell's shop in St. Petersburg that I found through the Flathead Club, which, what an incredible guy. He was blind with Parkinson's. And
you couldn't tell by the work he did.
We brought the motor in the back of a pickup truck, and he asked the technician who worked with me at Dimmitt Cadillac, who was a Ford guy, who drove it there. He says he's feeling it with his bare hands, or he's feeling it with his hand with his eyes closed. And he's like, mechanical or electric fuel pump. And Dave starts talking about push rod and whatever, and he ends up having the car for, the motor for we bought the car later, for about a year. So I certainly had the 1 year and whatever it cost to redo that motor and get a Lincoln crank and balance and blueprint and polish and, all the things. It was a great car when he was done with it. It was a great.
Yeah. I mean, I lose money on it. It didn't serve a profit motive for me, but you were looking to do something with the funds that you could get from selling it. And so I felt like it was a service to you, and you were.
You helped me. No doubt you helped me at the time. I think this was the AIG. What era was that? When did you? Because I think that was the AIG GM bankruptcy, Chrysler bankruptcy. I think I was in the car business and was softening up, and I just needed some money.
I think it was it. My dad was still alive, so it was like 8 or 9 years ago. It might have been in that.
Oh, it was more than that. Because I left the BMW store 9 years ago, and I was at BMW when I gave it to you.
Okay.
Oh, and it was in my dad's garage, and he was alive, and my dad died 9 years ago.
Okay, there you go. So, I mean, I know I had it. You didn't know this, but I had it parked next to a 9N Ford Flathead, and next to that was, I think it's a 1,200 cubic inch 6-cylinder gas engine on a 2-axle trailer that used to run a snowblower for an airport. That was called a Climax Blue Flame. The pistons were like a foot in diameter in this engine. So and we would start that up in the shop, and it literally would put a 2 to 3 foot blue flame out the exhaust. So I would start that engine first to show people, and then I'd start the Ford Flathead, and then I started your street rod.
I've seen your videos of the blue flame. I've seen that. But no, the point is about your investment versus vacation versus whatever. Yeah, I didn't say, oh, God, I paid this, then I spent this on the engine after I bought it, so therefore I'm too deep. I just wanted the experience of that car, always wanted one, always loved a Flathead, loved the exhaust sound, loved the experience. you couldn't get gas or go anywhere without people asking you about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the two stories that come to my mind is in 1987, Cal Peterson was the vice president of John Deere in Waterloo, Iowa. He's retired. And he had a 280 SL Mercedes that he was trading to me and offered him 25 grand for it. Oh, I couldn't possibly trade it for that. I'd have to have 30,000. Otherwise I'd be losing $5,000. And I said to him, just like this, I said, Cal, seriously? You bought this car 5 years ago. You drove it 2 years. In every rally, I'm in the Mercedes club with you. I saw you you put 15,000 miles on this car. Then you oversaw the restoration here at the shop for 15 months, and you enjoyed that. You were a part of it. And then you went around and won every show you could win with it, and you thoroughly have enjoyed it. And you just came home from Europe. You spent 10 grand and brag about how much fun you had. You had this car for 5 years, and you're worried about losing $5,000 that you spent on it? How can you even relate those two together? And he's like, oh, I guess how you think about it. And the other time was about 2 years ago. A really interesting guy I sold a bunch of vehicles for. He sends me 2 street rods that he had built from scratch, literally. He actually had a book. Here's how I want them to look. He engaged the builders, and he was involved in the design process, and they built them, and he drove them, and he had fun with them. And he said, I want you to sell them for me. I said, okay, what do you want for me? He goes, whatever they bring. I'm like, well, okay, but give me an idea. He says, no, seriously. I don't say this, and he's a very, very cool guy. He said, this is the best way I can explain it to you. My wife genuinely wanted us to rent a yacht in the Mediterranean for a week. It cost $110,000. I felt it was the most boring week of my life. These cars took me 2 to 2.5 years to build. I enjoyed the building process. I enjoyed it for 2 years. They owe me nothing. I got everything I wanted out of them. Whatever they bring is, frankly, immaterial. I just want you to do the best that you do and get the most whatever's they can bring. And that was his attitude.
Right. Market's market, and they don't owe me anything. That's perfect. Earlier you mentioned, hey, if you have a Porsche, you go to Bring a Trailer. Bring a Trailer is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Really. And Morrow's Cars and Bids.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's doing.
It's doing fine. Yeah. I mean, we load all their data, right? Both sides, all the digital and so I track and follow all them. It's what we didn't do in 2010 with Iron Planet Motors. The mistake that we made that both Bring a Trailer and Doug DeMuro did well with, they both built their community first.
There you go.
So Bring a Trailer, some people don't realize initially, it was a collaboration between Randy and his partner, the tech guy, Gentry Underwood. And Gentry was like, look, let me build you a platform where you can interact with car people and you guys can post things that are interesting to each other. And so as they started having people send them, hey, I saw this MGTD sitting on the side of the road with a for sale sign, and they take a picture and send it, Randy would post that in this platform. And then people could chat about it. And the next thing you know, someone say, hey, that's a cool car. That's only 20 miles away from me. I'm going to go look at it. And hey, I bought it. Look, snap picture. Well, obviously, they built this community, and sometime in about 2014, 15, they said, we should probably offer a service to be able to let people sell cars in our space. And so I applaud them to the fullest, irrespective of the fact that they sold to Hearst Media and it's a phenomenon. It's gone great as well. They just deserve a lot of credit for being genuine and creating a car community. And Doug DeMuro, in his own way, built a community just by saying, being who he is,
Right.
This,
right.
is the car, God bless him. I mean, you look at their track of how they got to where they are. And I think it's awesome. I think it's wonderful.
It's Bring a Trailer is famous for not accepting every entry, even when the seller is certain that they've got the coolest, low mile, interesting equipment.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't spend night and day analyzing, but I haven't figured out their algorithm because I've heard about some cars they turned down that surprised me.
Yeah. Well, to their credit, I believe that one of the most valuable aspects of their business model is to don't be predictable. I mean, they don't want, what if you were really, or I was really good and built a relationship with Howard Swig or Hearst Media, the new owners, or Randy, and oh, guess what, Jeff? I know the algorithm. Well, that's not going to work. So I think that's really, it's wisdom to be able to have a very tight control about what they choose and they don't choose. And listen, they give them credit. They win or lose, they succeed or fail based on their decisions. So, and that's not any different than you might call RM or Gooding or Bonhams and say, I got this great car and I want to sell it here. And they might say, well, we're not taking it unless it's no reserve, or we don't have room here, or already have one like that. It's not just one thing. It's not just three things. It's dozens of input points that cause them to decide yes or no. And I don't think you can look at it as that's right or that's wrong. It might be the seller. It could be the history. It could be the car. It could be the timing. It could be that they have two others that are stacked up and waiting and they don't want to get too many in one genre. There's a myriad of reasons, I believe, that they would turn somebody down. And the sad part is, I believe people take it too personally.
You think the lack of predictability is a plus. And so I'm thinking about what you said. And does this mean that when I'm a sales manager in a dealership, I accept some deals that the salespeople think are too low, and I turn down some deals that the salespeople think are easy that I'm going to approve? And the reason that I did that is so that they always just ran everything by me without making their own decisions out on the floor. Now let me explain this to the civilian, to the non-car person. So when you're wondering where your salesman's running, when you make an offer and you're like, why does he got to keep running to that guy or to that gal in that office? Well, broad stroke reason is you need one person making the checkbook decisions, because if they're too heavy on inventory, they may take a too low of an offer on something, not because it's good standalone, like they made a lot of profit, but they may do it from a cash flow standpoint or a manufacturer incentive because they hit a certain number of cars standpoint or something. Okay. But they need one person, not the people out on the floor dealing with customers, but one person making that decision who's also not emotionally involved, because the salesperson working with you, the consumer out on the floor, is now emotionally involved and really isn't competent to make a financial decision for the dealership. And by the way, even though I've had the largest business card in a dealership before, the biggest title, once I was out dealing with you on the floor, I would always, even though I could make a decision, I would always go back to another manager who was not the one dealing with a customer, because once I met you in person, I liked you and I really wanted you to have the car, or didn't like you and really didn't want you to have, or something.
Yeah.
And I was no longer competent regardless of title.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on at BAT, at Bring a Trailer? Yes. Like they just want the public to not know so that they'll just continue submitting. So they don't pre-decide?
Go the other way, Jeff. What's the alternative? Here is the criteria that we publish to you so you know what you can submit and what you won't submit. That's not going to stop the flow of inventory. They can only sell so many cars. No matter what they did, there's more desire of inventory to be on there than they can or will present. So there's no upside to them disclosing if there is a criteria per the moment. Like we did in 92, so we did the first boat auction deal, boat salvage acquisitions in 92 at Hurricane Andrew. By 2004, when the 4 storms came through Florida, I called the insurance companies like, oh, wow, we're going to get a lot of boats out of this, right? All those hurricanes. And they said immediately, no, we're not going to sell to you anymore. I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Well, we don't want you to buy from us. We want you to sell our boats for us. We saw what you did with the boats every time you had a hurricane. So we set up 4 different auctions in Florida, temporary locations where we moved all the boats. The first one was Fort Myers. So we advertised the auction and everybody showed up. And I told my auctioneer, Dean Eccles, I said, Dean, look, the first 5 boats, they're not particularly valuable. They're hurt pretty bad. They should bring between 5 and 10 grand. But I want you to do something that we call in the industry, I want you to fast hammer them. I want you to drop the auction gavel fast, early, like maybe even while someone's raising their arm. You sell it quickly.
Yeah, there's another bidder deeply involved, but sell it anyway.
So like the first boat should have brought 3,000 or 4,000. He goes, okay, boys, what do you want to pay? Who paid $10,000? Who paid $5,000? They always start high and they come down. How about 3? Right. Who paid $1,000? How about $500? Guy raises his hand for $500. He goes, sold, $500. And the crowd's like, what?
Usually it would begin there.
What happened? And they're stunned. I mean, you can see it in their eyes. We got it on video. They're stunned. They don't know what to do. The next boat comes up. It's maybe $2,500. All right, come on here. What do you pay? $500? $500? $750? $750 sold. Oh, and you see the heads turning left and right. They're talking to each other like, what the hell just happened? I didn't even get a chance to raise my hand. So we did that 5 times. What do you think happened when we got to the 6th boat?
Everybody was paying attention and engaged.
When he said $500 starting bid, every single bidder person that was breathing had their right hand in the air.
Right. Now they're in.
Created a fervor that's second to none. So why is this relative to bring a trailer? So every platform or presentation, those people attending that day could never have guessed that 5 guys were going to steal 5 boats. And we lost money on those 5. We gave those away so that we could crush it on the back end on the big stuff. So if I'd have started with, now listen, boys, we're going to sell these, absolute, no reserve, which we did. And you better be quick, make sure you get your hands in there. If I tried to encourage them, they would look at that as just a bunch of BS. There's no way that they can put up 1,000 or 2,000 cars and succeed. They have to grow the presentation volume with the attendance volume, right? So if they started out, which they did in low numbers, got to 100, 150, 200, 200. From 2 to 250, they pushed past 250, meaning any given time, 250 cars on the platform. They struggled with that 2 to 250 for a long time because they went up to 250 and you could see some challenges with, oh, I missed that car. I didn't see that car. There weren't enough eyes to pay attention to all 250 cars. And you don't want a car selling too cheap just because people didn't notice it.
Right.
So I personally believe that it's the right thing to do to manage the inflow volume with the attending volume. And of course, they're the only ones that have eyes on the back end of their technology to see how many people are actually watching.
And when you say you're gathering, when you're downloading everyone's data, this is in the list.
Yeah, well, I say that carefully. So I wouldn't say I'm downloading it because we don't technically download it. We manually load it in our system. That's the only way I can get it purely and not worry that down the road I would have gaps or miss something. So that's the method that we chose. It seems arduous and ridiculous, like mowing your grass one blade at a time, but it works better. So, since we have every car that's ever sold on Bring a Trailer in our database, we have every car that's sold internationally in the retail auction system since August of 2018. So, like, if you say to me, what's a 1988 Porsche Coupe with 200,000 miles worth? that's a struggle for anybody. Even a car guy's like, I know they're popular. I know it's a lot of miles. I know people will still buy it. But in 30 seconds, I can tell you what the last 5 of them has sold for more than 200,000 miles. And it will instantly encourage you to know what the market is. There's no question about what to do.
And the list is dealer members only.
So far.
Okay. So
we got a little thing coming out next spring that we're looking for.
Well, I mean, this piece seemed like it would be valuable to anyone in the world, dealer or not.
It is, and so that's the point. So we have some opinions about. I'm not a sports guy. I can watch just about any sport and find pleasure in it, but I don't go out of my way to watch a football game, a baseball game. I appreciate them all. I'm not a fantasy sports guy at all, but I'm definitely believing that there's a place for fantasy car collecting. And so you can't, the only way to help people understand values of fantasy cars is to give them the data, what the real cars have been selling for. So the teaser is, we're going to pick no reserve cars that are offered digitally and physically at different auctions. And the public is going to have the opportunity to say, I think this car is going to sell for $42,000. And so the first person that guesses the closest number will get some fantasy value.
I'm afraid to ask you, like, and there may not even be an answer unless there's a quick answer. Favorite car you've had, car you wish you had. I mean, my God,
So I remember in the 60s visiting my parents' grandparents and Christmas and Thanksgiving. And I remember as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old listening to the older folks at that time. I wish I still had my first car, right?
Of course.
Nobody in the business or in the hobby has not heard that conversation. So I just tucked that in the back. I said, all right. So by 1997, the year before my son was born, I owned my first bicycle, still, Schwinn Stingray. My first car, 71 Mach 1. My first truck, 42 Ford pickup. My first airplane, J5 Cub Coupe. My first boat, the you don't even know about this one, 1937 Hafercraft with a Flathead V8 60 Tinside. I held those things a long time, Jeff. And I came to the conclusion that it's just a little easier to sell the real things and buy the model.
Okay.
So I have lots of favorites. I have enjoyed very much. There's so many cars when you're a dealer. I did both 50 cars a month as a wholesale auto dealer, and I did run a few stores. So many cars came through my experience of life. But I'd have to say that the cars that stand out, the most visceral car that I ever was behind the wheel of was a street rod built by Tom Coyote. It was a 1,450 horsepower alcohol injected Pontiac street rod. And after driving that car one day, I got out of it and Deborah was videoing me. I have the video somewhere. And not from fear, because I've been blessed and fortunate to be pretty, I'm not afraid of machinery. I mean, I jump in anything and I'll give it a shot. But I was so excited that she says, look at your knees. I mean, it was just, that car was hard to explain. I get chills thinking about it. It's not that I really liked the car that much. It was just a loud, visceral, throbbing, incredible machine. And so that was interesting. The Aston Martin Vulcan was equally extraordinary. I mean, a car that literally throws flames out the pipes on the side. And the Aston Martin team that supports that. A lot of people don't know about that program. It was phenomenal. It was 24 cars to celebrate the 24-hour Le Mans. So they only made 24 cars. And when you bought the car, what came with it was the care and transportation of that track-only car to, I think it was 2 or 3 events a year. So they basically, if you want to keep the car at your place, you can. Otherwise, they keep it in England. And then you fly to the Austin track or Nürburgring or wherever they're going to have the event. The cars would all be there. You'd have a driver to instruct you. You'd have 2 techs to care for the car. I mean, you basically felt like you had a race team. And you drove the car to the limit of your experience and their guidance on the track. I mean, it was very cool. Very, very cool. But for day in, day out, you know, I've got cars that were special to me. I mean, the first really cool car I bought was the Pantera. I bought a 75 European Pantera that is the only one that had a sunroof from the factory. And that's the first car I ever sold at auction. I actually sold it. And there's a great lesson for everybody. First auction I ever sold a car at, it was called Lou Lazarus April in Rockford, Illinois. That was the name of the auction. And I consigned it. This is before Mecum started. And I wanted $25,000 for it.
Okay.
And at 20 grand, they had run out of bidders, right? So the grinder, remember I referred to earlier, the grinder is leaning on my shoulder. Come on, son, lift the reserve, lift the reserve. It'll go crazy then. Everybody will start bidding once they know it's for sale, right?
Right.
I'm not kidding you, because the auctioneer is watching me as I'm thinking about this. And as soon as I uttered the words to the ringman or the grinder, okay, meaning go ahead, lift the reserve. Yeah. I mean, the very second I said, okay, bam, the hammer.
they hammered it sold.
I'm like, what just happened?
What happened to the bidding going crazy?
And so for those that don't know or might not think about it, and what I learned that day was very simple, and Jeff knows. Once the auction house knew that I would accept the $20,000 bid, they knew their commission was earned.
Right.
No sense beating a dead horse and getting the young man another 1,000 or 2, because we're only going to get 10% of that. Let's move on to the next car. So that was a shell shock. I was like, okay, not making that mistake again. We've had some extraordinary experiences. I mean, probably one of the, so there's some real colorful characters that we've run across. Like in 1987, I was reading Auto Week magazine, and I'm paging through, because, you know, we have the internet, you know, look for cars.
I used to get Auto Week.
So I'd go to the library on Sunday and read the big city newspapers for classified ads. And then I'd read Auto Week. And so I'm in Auto Week, I see this Wisconsin phone number for 1988 750 IL BMW. That was a big deal. That car had just come out, the 750 V12. And I'm like, what is this car doing? They just came out a month ago. I don't get it. So I call this guy. His name was Eddie Weschler, just outside of Milwaukee. And so Deborah and I drove from Clinton, Iowa to this little ramshackle house overlooking a lake. And I'm not kidding you, Jeff. 20 or 30 of the coolest cars that you can imagine. Pontoon Fender Ferraris, Mira, Testarossa, you know, just the creme de la creme, right? Like crazy cool cars. And here's this guy, his family sold their hops business in the 50s for beer, right?
Yep.
And he never worked. And he just lived by himself in this little house and had this amazing car collection. He bought that car, drove it for 250 miles, and he was done with it.
He had enough.
It was awesome. Yeah. And then we kept buying cars from him. He'd call us and he'd say, hey, I got another car for you, a 1990 twin turbo ZX. And Deborah, I remember her on that car. She said, "Oh, I can't go with you. You need to get somebody else. I'm busy." I said, "Oh, no. You're coming." I don't know why he's selling us these cars for this money, but I'm not going to disrupt the experience. I want to make sure that we both show up just like we did the first time.
That's beautiful.
I think people, if you take the stuff away, the people have been absolutely more fun. The relationships and getting to know people and learning from them and some of their experiences, good and bad, that's been extraordinarily rewarding.
With all the businesses that you're in, Scott, and as much as your phone rings, I'm sure of it, I don't even know how you manage it. I mean, I know you love the people and experiences.
I don't know. Yeah, it's. I mean, Deborah deserves a lot of credit for tolerating it. It definitely is peculiar, and I have friends. Oh, you're never going to retire. You know, you alluded to. You know, we've got this a year and a half ago. We started this dry cleaning. You know, which is a whole nother animal that's really we're excited about, and I just I don't know. I probably spent half of my time daily trying to guide and help people in what it is they might be doing and make good decisions for themselves and what they're doing. And Deborah, it irritates Deborah once in a while. She says, I tell you what I want on my headstone. I said, okay, what's that? This is my wife I'm talking about. She goes, Deborah, here lies Deborah Ailes. What's my cut? Because she hears she just hears the time that I invest with people. And, the summation for me about life is, I think this is practice or college for eternity. And I want to try to be as prepared as I can to help people. I don't expect that eternity is going to be laying around doing nothing. And so that's why I go back to that Christmas gift idea that, the joy in Christmas, we just experienced it yesterday. The joy of Christmas is watching when you give somebody something. That's priceless.
Well, you've been presenting things online. You've been creating presentations for God knows.
Yeah.
You were about the original online and probably before online, magazine classified or, who knows, presenter. Getting interest from long distance.
Yep.
And you have a cleaning process, dry ice, that's not making contact with the material, but turning into a gas that's cleaning, if I recall you explaining. I've watched a few of your videos, but it removes everything that wasn't originally there and leaves everything that was originally there, whether it be metal, leather, whatever.
Yeah. The shortest version of explanation is this. Dry ice upon impact when accelerated against a substrate or surface converts from a solid to a gas, and that's a thermal reaction. It's like a miniature explosion. And if properly executed with the right techniques and equipment and knowledge, it can without abrasion can clean any surface, almost any surface. The only surface that you can't clean that it will destroy is foam.
Okay.
Everything else is on the table. And so we've done, people are surprised. Oh yeah, they've been cleaning cars with dry ice for years. They have, but not the way we are, and not to the extent. There's not a surface on the car save for foam, not a surface that we can't clean and don't clean. I mean, interiors, exteriors, trim. So it definitely, we go down, we spend hours talking about it, but the easiest thing is our website is youngtimer.com, and everything you want to know about, it's a good introduction to who we are and what we do. And for those that don't know, we chose that because that's a Germanic term that refers to cars that are 20 to 30 years old. A young timer is a car that is 20 to 30 years old. And that's where we are spending our time these days.
And if somebody needs their foam cleaned, don't call you.
Correct. We will not clean your foam.
Scott, any tips for someone going to buy at auction?
Yeah, so the number one thing that I would say about buying at auction is seek and find someone that is experienced and just ask them to hold your hand a little bit. It doesn't have to be me. There's plenty of people that have been doing it for decades. There's a lot going on in a very quick period of time. And Dana has shared this with me many times, as well as other auction companies. Their desire is to educate people and have them confident and educated about what they're trying to accomplish. The concept of, set your price and don't budge beyond it. I don't buy into that, because you might be at $62,500 and that was your limit, and you could get it for $62,700. So you really going to pass over $200? So I'm not subscribing to that being the number one thing. Set your limit and don't get emotional about it. You're not buying a collector car because you don't want emotional experiences.
Right. It is emotion.
Yeah, it's part of the process. And so I just would encourage you to, seek out people that you see regularly on camera, or that they're going to be happy to help you. And if they're not, you call me and I'll guide you if I don't have the time or space. I mean, it really is something that you can, when you understand a little bit about what's happening, it's like anything. It's like there's a lot of stuff that I don't know anything about, but I know the space really well, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of people you can turn to that'll kind of guide you through that process. And if they charge you, we charge. If you want a full blown consultant experience and you want to know that you're having I charge for that. But just quick quips, and just insights. Some of the stuff, it's like any industry. Some stuff you just can't talk about publicly. There are things that go on at auctions that are just never going to be discussed. And, they have to be done in private. And that's just the way the business is. And I believe it always will be. There's not going to be any whistleblower come out, and go crazy. It's a very interesting industry. I've been a fan of auctions all my life, and they've been around for centuries, and they're not going anywhere.
That is true. And I just lied to you and said we're wrapping up.
But
looking at my notes, I mean, you're terrific, man. I mean, you're a great storyteller, and you're a great soul, and you're a serving soul. When Scott says call him up if you need a quick piece of advice, I actually know he means it. But I forgot about. Do you remember the latest phone call you ever got asking someone to put a value on a boat? And was it me?
Yeah, I can't think of what it was though.
I was in the BMW showroom. My salesperson, this was probably 15 years ago, my salesperson says, "Hey boss, we're all closed up. It's just you and I here. There's somebody out on the property. Do you mind if I wait on them?" Which, by the way, bothered me, because that just meant the prior management to me used to give them grief about waiting on someone after closing. Right. I was all in. Right. I put my briefcase down and opened the building up a million times, for people.
Yeah.
So she went out and waited on him, and as luck would have it, when it's already 9:00 and you're kind of ready to go, it was a couple wanting 2 cars. Now, normally when you're selling things, you're thrilled to sell 2 of them, but in this case, 2-car deals take longer than 2 1-car deals often.
Sure.
As they try to balance, they need their payments all to fall into this, or and it's a husband and a wife just moved down from upstate New York. I said, let's just do them one at a time. We complete deal number 1. Now they're out picking out car number 2. It's 11 and change probably. And they're ready to buy the second car. They were beautiful people. They're ready to buy the second car, and they have a boat to trade in. So I think of you. But I'm wondering, can I call you at this hour?
Yeah.
But the boat trade-in was at a marina in New York. Ring a bell or don't ring a bell?
I want to know. I was thinking it was another one that was on a lift in Sarasota or Tampa, but it's not a boat.
No, and I feel bad because I just think your world revolves around me. But I called you at, pick a number, 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, or it went a couple phone calls, few calls in between there. But some people buying a new BMW, trading in a boat sight unseen that's at a marina in upstate New York. And based on description and based on you calling the guy at the marina and you having to collect the boat from this marina in New York, you actually...
And that was killing me. What was it?
I don't know.
Oh.
I'll for sure find out.
Find out, yeah. Because
Mary, the salesperson, she's still there. Because whenever I go in there for service, she still says, "Remember that couple? They got another car." They always ask about.
I was immediately thinking of a 26-foot, 4 or 5 year old boat that I bought in Tampa. My friend and I went over to get it, and the propellers were so fouled up with
barnacles
that it wouldn't go over 6-7 knots. This is like a 23 knot boat. And we got stuck in a bay area and the tide went out. Oh, and I had to jump in the water and physically turn the nose around into the wind and drag the boat off of the...
Well, for those of you that, wonder if car business is all sex appeal, not as sexy as it looks. This deal that Scott helped me with, where he bought the sight unseen boat, traded in upstate New York. I remember while I'm waiting for the finance department to finish these people's paperwork, I'm watching the closing music and credits for the Tonight Show in the lounge.
I mean, I don't know. When you love what you do and you're passionate about it and you like people, and I do, the only challenge for me has been being fair to my only child and my wife of 40 years. And to their credit, they have been amazingly tolerant of, my career path. And, Deborah, my gosh, I have probably the thing that I'll go to my grave wishing I could do better is expressing to her the value that she has brought to my efforts. And I'm not just, trying to blow smoke up her skirt. There's no way that we could have assisted people that we have through the years, if not a team. It's so much has been a team. And we're those odd couples that we work in the same office together all our lives. And we still love each other.
Well, that's beautiful. And that's, a wonderful thing about you. One of the things that make you legendary. I mean, you're dodging compliments. You're putting the credit where it belongs. You're honoring your wife. You love your son. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I want to thank you, man. It's Saturday. It's 3 and change on a Saturday afternoon. It's nice out, and you've neglected your family once again to talk to me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Congratulations on the endeavor. It's going to be awesome. I know you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
It's fun. I'm enjoying every minute of it as I neglect my family doing it.
This has been Jeff Sterns, Connected Through Cars.